command, persevere, achieve, cheat, puppeteer. These 5 words of power are used to describe the Night Clan, the Lasombra, or do they actually? I am your Lord and Saviour, and this is the bloody guide to Vampire Roleplay. The Lasombra are creatures of darkness, much like their vampiric cousins. Unlike the other kindred, I mean it rather literally. The progenitor of the clan, the Lasombra antediluvian Lasombra, to use one of his 400 possible names, possess mastery over the shadows and darkness, calling forth the nothingness of the abyss to manipulate the shadows and darkness around them, a taint that would corrupt every descendant thereafter. The earliest of the clan would travel across the seas and dominate Rome and the religious and institutions that would indoctrinate Europe afterwards. Alongside the Zamitzi, the Lasombra would instigate the Anarch revolt, be the sword of the Sabbat, as well as provoke the Inquisition into being. The Americas would feel their might, leading the Sword of Cain into greatness, but as the Second Inquisition would rise and the Sabbat would falter, the Amici Noctis, the Friends of the Night, the heads of the Lasombra, would take just under half of the clan into the Camarilla, their enemies of some 500 years, taking their influence of the church and their black magics with them. It is easy to make direct comparisons to the Ventrue, how the Magisters are the darkness to the Ventrue's light, but such a statement would get you shot. They are both rulers and seek dominance, but there is a huge difference between their motives. The Ventrue are egotistical, believing it is their birthright to rule. Cain made Ventrue rule Enoch, and so too must his descendants. They are a crude caricature of the monarchy and capitalism. The Lasombra are simultaneously much easier to understand and far more nuanced. Clan Lasombra prioritize their personal success over gaining power of status. Strength is the key to the success of the Lasombra, and they are willing to make any sacrifice to achieve it. Put a pin in that, we'll come back to that. While they use spirituality as a means to an end, they do not seek true enlightenment. This devotion to the cause is seen with the most recent of Lasombra plotlines, which has less than half the clan defect to the Camarilla, showing their loyalties to their ideologies rather than sect affiliations. Lasombra anti-tribu have always been a theme in VTM metaplot since the inception of the sects. Montaro, child of Lasombra, has always been with the Camarilla, and many followed. Despite the grander exodus, the themes for Camarilla aligned have not changed in terms of motivation. The Lasombra will win the jihad, they just have a different tool to forward their agendas. There is no love for the tower, for it is barely more than palatable than the Sword of Cain. Their existence is one of inches and degrees. These Lasombra see the Sabbat as a failure and no longer worthy of their control, which is why the Friends of the Night pulled from the Sabbat. The survival of the clan was greater than the goals of the faction they started. By joining their enemies rather than becoming an independent faction, they believe the Sabbat must go. It all speaks volumes of the determination for their persistence and whoever they introduce into the clan next, and who Sabbat Lasombra and possibly the sect as a whole will target first. If your Lasombra is a character who remembers the Sabbat, think about what it must have been like and how you managed to cope in more inhumane circumstances then and more humane circumstances now. At least what vampires believe humanity should be, rather than actually emulating it. Do you dress and act like your former Sabbat self, or do you try to blend in more? There is also the matter in which the Lasombra exist in the Camarilla now, especially for the younger neonate, unaware of the traumas of those who were embraced into the Sabbat. It is known that in the city of Chicago, a Camarilla domain, for every Lasombra to be embraced, an elder must be sacrificed. This is described in Chicago by Night, 5th edition, as well as the visual novel Shadows of New York, which appears to follow a similar condition. This, however, is not the same across all Camarilla domains, as discussed in Chicago by Night. Discuss with the storyteller and vice versa about these conditions, how many are you and how your character feels about all of this, how they deal with the burden of some 500 years of hatred, manipulation and tyranny. There is no denying that Lasombra and indeed many other vampires who fought in the Anarch revolt have become what they have despised, manipulative elders that thrive on abuse and torment. The Lasombra that became the Sabbat would continue to thrive in the Sabbat or Camarilla, and not shake off the shackles of their size, but embraced them. The true Lasombra in this case would be the very few that are the ones in the Anarchs, though both Camarilla and Sabbat Lasombra would deem those true failures. They are devoid of their legacy, lost causes with no ambition or decisive thinking. They are just not shameful but an insult to the clan, not that it would bother said Anarch. The elders of the Camarilla and Sabbat are cowards, feeding their young into the gaping maw of the Second Inquisition. Even among the Anarchs, the Lasombra show a great deal of cunning and deception, just like their Sabbat and Camarilla brethren. They just value their independence more than anything else. They are the thinkers and planners of the Anarch philosophies, passionate about the cause. That doesn't mean, however, the Lasombra Anarchs are not afraid to get their hands dirty and engage in conflict when necessary, which even their critics must acknowledge. Much like the younger Camarilla traitors, there is plenty of rage and frustration to be had, just the moral compass of each springs wildly in opposite directions. Regardless of sect affiliation, the Lasombra has always embraced people whom they considered to be ruthless, determined for their success above all else, and willing to make the ultimate sacrifice to achieve it. When it comes to the embrace, it is their humanity that must go. Lasombra tear down their future child's lifestyle, tearing them apart from their loved ones, crumbling their enterprises, and rebuilding them anew in things that matter to the clan. Though it is really the child that has to establish themselves in Canaanite society. Sure, the Sai could forcibly embrace them, but what good is that? No lesson has been learned, and without this guidance, the Lasombra to be would fail, and failures should not take up space. Whether you are a mercenary, a rabbi, a journalist, or something a bit more esoteric like a fitness guru, you will excel at it because anything else is insignificant. If your coterie and any of their mortal contacts, allies, and touchstones don't describe you as callous, then there is still a lot of work to be done. You don't need a stupid bane or compulsion to do this either. Remember that everyone is a tool for you, and you are alone. The most unique of these tools is the brand of Oblivion that allows the Lasombra to manipulate and weave the shadows to their will, making a soul pact with the Abyss, another plane of existence that you might as well call Hell. It is an alien power with alien properties that scare and stain away your humanity. Something that I say is as fanatic and mechanical as getting certain rolls on your rouse checks. Using these type of Oblivion powers inflicts stains on your humanity, which it should. There are many comments and discussions to be had regarding the coldness of these applications of Oblivion, but it should be agreed that these powers are not yours, but those of another dimension, on loan, whilst the Oblivion of the Hecata does not incur such stains. I argue that it should if you're going to haphazardly slap the two together. Now, I've said this in my Hecata guide, but I will stand on my hill and insist that it is really different from the Lasombra variant, as the treating of the underworld and the abyss, or hell, are different in many tales of mythic proportion, both in and out of the world of darkness. Both brands of Oblivion use cripple the draining sanity of the wielder, but in very different ways. The Lasombra use has them confront the darkness and stare into it. The Abyss stares back, loaning the Lasombra powers that stain their humanity as they manipulate the darkness, a natural order instilled by God, a reminder that they and their powers are not a natural order of things. The Oblivion of the Hecata reinforces they are oxymorons of existence, the puppeteers of the deceased and little gods of entropy, both forever the plaything of the Hecata. Almost all the clans and bloodlines have strong religious ties, those of the Hecata I mean, and to an extent of the Lasombra, which adds to a strange catharsis when you discover something new, whether it is a success or not. Both forms of Oblivion provide answers that demand more questions, but one is easier for the mortal mind to comprehend than the other. With regards to the other two disciplines of the Lasombra, Potent and Dominate, they further amplify their difference from the Ventrue, as well as the attitude of the Lasombra themselves. The Blue Bloods, the Ventrus, have Fortitude and Presence. The former they use to bulk up with Fortitude as they are forced into a fight, but the Keepers live for combat as they happily practice Potence. The Ventrue draw attention to themselves with Presence, making themselves the voices of reason or the authority to be feared, depending on the circumstance, whilst the Lasombra hide and stalk with Oblivion, manipulating from afar if need be, but they are not afraid to take someone down up close either, as already ascertained. The use of Dominate between the other two differs. The Ventrue use Dominate to demand loyalty. The Lasombra use Dominate to get results, another reminder of the core differences. What separates both of these clans is their attachment to humanity, or the lack of thereof in the case of most Lasombra. Both are malicious, but one could be arguably more inhumane than the other. After all, you needn't be a CEO, king, or a president to rule after all. A good leader exercises control. Anyone can bark and shout orders about with next to no prevail. Obedience without such measures is the mark of a true master, and the Lasombra are the true masters of control. And the one thing they cannot control in 5th edition is their appearance on digital recordings, something that I personally have mixed feelings about. On the one hand, it makes sense. The Lasombra, since their inception, have always been unable to see their reflection, be it a puddle and mirror, so it makes sense that the next step in that part of the Lasombra story as society transitions into the digital age. It further amplifies the point of the Lasombra and, to use a legacy term for a moment, the obtenebration they wield not being allowed to exist in harmony with the physical world. Like all Banes, it is not something that they can control and use, a weakness of the clan that forces them to overcome and adapt to this blight, forcing many to venture into thralling ghouls, something to use in a tricky situation. It is not a hacker power, their Banes I mean. It is not even a power, it is a fault in their blood. Yet, I have seen many players, including my own, what constitutes as a tech fucking up ability, but wanting to become a 19th hacker person surfing the deep web with their powers at any and everything. This obviously kills the mood and tension of the clan as well as the game itself, and I don't think it is unreasonable for an ST to clamp down before it spreads into something nasty and infectious. Now, if the player does insist on doing something they believe to be clever, and you don't want to clamp down straight away but just work straight up to it, do what I do and borrow Legacy Edition's Way of the Apocalypse and have the player look for failures instead. If the player fails the associated tech roll, then the thing they want to fuck up happens, to show it is a fail state. Now, if they succeed in the roll, something worse happens. Instead of shutting down the security, every guard, monitor and their mother is pointing at your exact location. Instead of sending a secret text message in Elysium, some random hunter now has your number. Your players will love and hate you for it, but it should make them think twice about trying to cheat the system. With this wide range of functions, there are many ways you can bend predator types to fit your kindred concepts, but here is what I would suggest. Alleycat and Bloodleech are the most obvious ones, with the latter useful if you want a Sabbat K-Knight who got a bit addicted to the whole Diablerie thing, which is not me saying you should go around Diablerizing Ron, that is just silly. The Sabbat are cruel, with some of their games involving bloodthirsty chases, making Montaro an interesting choice. Stalker might be another player guide's choice, should your Lasombra really enjoy the company of the shadows. For those wanting to blend in more but not sure how, a Lasombra trying to blend in may find the Sing Queen a better fit, feeding safely amongst mortals you deem to be safe. With many of the cults that have popped up during the V5 plotline, Osiris may be an interesting choice for this as well. There are many lore sheets you can assign to your character, but here are some of the ones I think fit well with tonight's clan. Jumping off of the Predator type list, many of the cults mentioned in the various Onyx Path publishing books, as well as the Camarilla book, can provide many cults for the Lasombra to mingle and to become a part of, maybe even run with the right choices. The First Inquisition, Sect War, Veteran from the core book, and Anarch Revolt from Anarch all connect the Lasombra to the original Anarchists, and an older Lasombra, proud of their history, or a younger one trying to prove a point, may benefit from having some dots in any of these. Lasombra, unable to shake the ties of their old Sabbat days, may wish to cling to the past of the Book of Nod lore sheet from Chicago by Night, or Kindred Dueling from Chicago Folios, which is essentially ye old monomancy, but don't tell anyone that. The Lasombra are also a high clan, so choosing that from the core book may benefit the snobs amongst you. On the flip side, anyone who wants to try and get further involved with the Camarilla may want to hook up with one of the various NPCs mentioned in Camarilla and Chicago by Night via their various lore sheets, but keep in mind that it's highly likely you're going to be their little bitch. Traditionally, you won't have a high position of power in Camarilla courts, but there is no reason why you can't bend things to your liking, providing the ST approves, and you can certainly work towards that in-game. Chicago by Night offers you the chance to be a descendant of Montaro via the lore sheet of the same name, which is the only Lasombra-only lore sheet at the time of recording. You can also be connected to Tally via his lore sheet. Whilst implied not involving the Lasombra, the Court of Shadows lore sheet from Fall of London can also be a Lasombra-focused group, if you so choose. It would make an interesting twist to the Friends of Night, but British, innit? There are many ways one can build a character. Some of them are wrong, but most of them are right. Ultimately, it should be the narrative that drives the stats, powers and mechanics, and work with and against them. These are just my takes and mine alone. How would you build a character belonging to this vampire clan? What wouldn't you do? What would you add to shake things up and make the concept just a little bit spicy? Let me know in the comments below. To be kept updated, follow the Lore by Night VTM Instagram and Blue Sky pages to find out when we upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, as you'll be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.